lift it, and you can.
Okay.
I mean,
So I will call the regular meeting of the Oregon City Commission to order for Wednesday, March 15th, 2017. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Ide. Here. Commissioner Shaw.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Here.
Commissioner Mengelberg. Here. Mayor Holliday.
Here. If you'd please stand and join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so moving on, under ceremonies and proclamations, 17-177, the Oregon City Library Foundation. Ms. Cole.
good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Tonight I would like to invite Karen Martini, the chair of the Library Foundation, to approach and speak, please.
Evening, Karen.
Good evening. Mayor Holliday and Commissioners, thank you for allowing us to be here tonight. We have a really special thing to do. It's the result of a couple of years of hard work, and we're just thrilled to be here this evening. I want to start by just introducing the board members from the Oregon City Library Foundation. These are both current and past board members. Some of them are here. I'm going to ask them to wave their hands when I call their names. Pam Bloom, Linda Van Haverbeek, Brian Johnson, Steve Milner, Daphne West, Harriet Schul, and we have several who were unable to attend: Glenda Saunders, D.A. Hildebrand, Mike Sears, and Claire Kellogg. So as you may recall, way back when we started talking about building a library, the Oregon City Library Foundation made a commitment to help out with the budget for that project. And we were tasked with filling a gap, a shortfall in the budget of about $241,000. And then we also wanted to do a couple of other things. We wanted to be able to add some things to that facility that maybe hadn't been envisioned or just didn't quite fit into that tight budget. And we also wanted to create a fund for the future so that we can continue rolling some support into the library. So we set a goal of $500,000, and thanks to some grants from area foundations, a very generous contribution from the Friends of the Library, from our local businesses and individuals, over 350 donors participated. And so on their behalf, we were able to raise $500,000 plus for our library. So we're really thrilled about that. And the Library Foundation was really just the vehicle. You know, I mean, we put our own money into it, but I'll tell you what, this community stepped forward. I've done a lot of fundraising campaigns. I've never seen one where the support was just so universal, and so people were so proud to step up and do that. So it was really a joy to work on. We're thrilled to have it done. So I would like to invite my board members to come forward, please, all of you, and bring our very large check. Come on, guys. Don't be shy. So on behalf of the Oregon City Library Foundation, we are very pleased to present you with this check, $296,536. And this represents, I'll just kind of break it down, $241,000 was our original commitment. A little over $27,000 built the reading circle, which is outside on the north side of the library. Little over $20,000 went into the redo of the Carnegie staircase in the front, and about $8,000 built the replicated card catalog wall, where we will display the names of about 300 donors, and it also is a great spot to hide things behind. It kind of worked out in the facility. So this was a great opportunity for us. Thrilled with how the community rallied. This board worked tirelessly to make it happen. So, on everybody's behalf, please accept our contribution to the project.
Thank you.
So, Mayor Holliday, if we could ask you to come around and accept the check, please. And Mo, you too. Come on, Mo.
Where's Wyatt?
Right here by the check.
Okay.
How about that?
All right.
If the rest of the board wants to scooch around.
Yeah,
come on, you guys.
board members, come on in.
You scooch.
Come out, swing here with me.
There you go.
Way to dress it up there.
One, two, three. Over here. One more. Okay.
Yay. Thank you. Thank you.
Nice job, gang.
Exciting.
You want this in my library? Yes. Yeah, so I do want this in the library. Thank you.
Where's Barnum?
All right, so moving on.
Is it?
We have 17170 National Park Service presentation. Mr. Lewis. Mr. Phil Lewis.
Mr. Phil Lewis. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. I'd like to invite up our partners with the National Park Service at our Fort Vancouver National Historic Site, Tracy Fortman and Alex Patterson, to talk about the location and our partnership.
So if you would give your name and city of residence for the record, please.
Yes, I'm Tracy Fortman, Superintendent of Fort Vancouver National Historic Site. I live in Vancouver, Washington. I'm responsible for the National Park in Vancouver as well as here in Oregon City.
Alex Patterson, Facility Manager, Fort Vancouver National Historic Site. I live in Portland, Oregon.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you. It's
Thank you
good
for
to be
having
here.
us.
So we're here to give you a quick update on what we're doing at your national park. And we try to come here on an annual basis. Unfortunately, due to no one's fault other than conflicting schedules, we were here to see you this fall, but we had to cancel that. I did provide with you, our centennial was last year, so 100 years of national parks, 2016. And so I wanted to make sure that you got the centennial map, which has almost all of the national parks, so you should have gotten that. As well as I did put aside, I believe enough for everybody up here, the commemorative pin as a memento of our 100th anniversary. And then you have hot off the press our annual report for 2016. So definitely want to let you know that we are always interested in hearing from the commission and obviously city leadership. We have a great relationship with Phil. And I've been felt honored to be here and work with Oregon City for a number of years, and think things are going really well. And we're very pleased to share with you what we've been able to do. So the first slide, as you can see, shows the McLaughlin House, which is a jewel of the Pacific Northwest. Certainly one of the earliest and most significant homes in the Pacific Northwest. One thing I do want to say is it was important for me, for my facility manager, which is Alex Patterson, to be here today. As a superintendent, I get the luxury of identifying all the many projects I'd like to see get done, and my list is frequently fairly, perhaps endless. Alex's responsibility is not only to make those projects a reality, he has to get them done on time, under budget, and in a safe manner. So he's really the guy that where the rubber meets the road. And so I felt it was really important for you to get to know him and certainly know of the great work he's done at the McLaughlin House site. So just to start out the PowerPoint presentation, as you all know, we're responsible for more recently the site here in Oregon City. Fort Vancouver was established in 1948 and became responsible much later here for Oregon City. So we have responsibilities in Vancouver, Washington, as well as Oregon City, Oregon. Last year was a tremendously significant year for us as the centennial, but also for our visitation. Visitation at this urban national park surpassed 1,100,000 visitors. The bulk of that, I have to admit, was in Vancouver, and we had approximately a little over 5,000 visiting Oregon City here at the McLaughlin House site. We are second in visitation only to Olympic at this point and surpass many other national parks in the Pacific Northwest area. I think we are becoming more and more than just a hidden jewel that we were historically known, and we will continue to work to identify ways to create and encourage visitation to the McLaughlin House site. I think one of the tremendous values of it now being part of the national park is that it is free, and so visitors, when they come, do not have to pay a fee to get into the site. Next slide, please. So in an effort to encourage visitors to come to the McLaughlin House site, we just opened up a new exhibit, and as you can see, that is a silk dress that belonged to Maria Barkley, and it was in her possession, and she wore it when she lived here in Oregon City. I think the thing that seems very appropriate is we unveiled that for this month, March, which is Women's History Month. And we actually have two special a talk that will be happening later this month about the McLaughlin women based on research that our assistant curator did, and that's March the 31st during the day. So these are the just an example of the ways we're trying to encourage people to continue to come and check out the McLaughlin House site.
Just
Next.
out of curiosity, where did you find it at auction?
Where what?
Where did you find the dress at auction?
It's what's at auction. We heard about it, and I can't remember the individual that contacted us. But then that was just the beginning for us. Then we needed to do the investigation to see if there was the kind of information necessary to ensure that it was reasonable to expect that it was actually a dress that was worn by Maria Barkley and the other sorts of information. And one of the things we were able to do is to verify a lot of that. We have a volunteer who is a 19th century textiles expert, and she was also able to look at the information that was provided and look at the material to help find that. And so we felt that it was reasonable and that the information provided made it seem very likely, and so we bid for it, and we were successful in doing it. Next slide. Yes. The other big changes that will happen is those of you, and I hope everyone has been to the McLaughlin House site. For many years, the draperies that have been there, I'd like to say, have been good soldiers, and they have served the site well, but they have been in need for repair for many years. A lot of sun damage. Some of the fabrics are almost to the point of almost disintegrating. And so we undertook a number of years ago to seek project dollars to be able to put the kind of draperies install them that would be reflective of a home of that period. That also required doing the research to identify the design, the style, and the fabrics to ensure that what we did put in would reflect that time period. And these are some of the materials. The upper right one is likely will go into his study, but again, we had a specialist identify drapery materials today that you would have been able to have seen in the 1850s, so that it would be appropriate. And in the near future, we will be adding, replacing the existing carpets, as well as wallpaper, and again, doing the sort of painstaking work it takes with specialists to locate and identify carpet that would have been of that style from the time. And we hope to do those in the near future. And then I'd like to turn over some of the big projects and allow Alex to speak to those.
Thank you. Our first slide here is on cyclic maintenance painting. So this past year, 2016, we were able to fund a cyclic maintenance project to repaint the McLaughlin House, as well as a number of other structures, one other being the Barclay House, and then a number of other structures at the Fort Vancouver in Vancouver, Washington. The slide depicts a picture from 2008 where the National Park Service abated 100% of the lead content on the exterior of the building and windows. You see the windows on the left were actually taken out of the building and then brought back to our shop, where we redid by hand each double hung window. During that project, we experimented with a paint that was a boiled linseed oil paint. We've heard that it was going to act much more like lead paint, and it was touted as being a 50-year paint. But as we learned 8 years later, that was not the case. So when our cycle came around 8 years later, we were able to go ahead and cover the linseed oil paint back up and to put a well-known product, just a superior latex product, back on the building. And the photo on the right is it just being prepped, and the project is, say, 95% complete. If you look closely, there's a few other areas that the painter still needs to finish up, but they're on a weather hiatus right now. So I mentioned that we also painted the Barclay House. Here's a before and after picture. You'll notice the color. It's a Benjamin Moore Harvest wheat color, and we found through painstaking paint analysis, where we actually physically removed the different layers down to the bare wood and analyzed the color, that we found that this yellow color would have been that's what the Barclay House would have had on its exterior during the period of significance. And we did the same with the McLaughlin House too. Here's a photo of our two most recent roofing projects over here on this side of the river. We have the Barclay House on the right and the McLaughlin House on the left. And while they do look similar, the Barclay House has a cedar shingle and the McLaughlin House has a cedar shake. And we like to make that distinction because when the buildings were first constructed, we feel that it's more appropriate to have the cedar shake, which is a hand split, versus a shingle, which would have been produced in a sawmill. So the point being that they did not have as many sawmills up and running in production when the McLaughlin House was first constructed. This project on the left was completed in 2010, and it removed an asbestos tile. Many people thought it was a slate tile, and were wondering where all that beautiful slate that we took off the McLaughlin House was actually asbestos, and we took care of that appropriately. And the Barclay House roof was completed in 2013. Another recent project in 2014 is we repointed the chimneys and replaced the chimney caps with a copper low-profile cap. I think if you recall back, the McLaughlin House had a domed copper cap, and in our historic structures report, we determined that was actually, while it looked wonderful and beautiful, it was not appropriate. So we went back with a low profile, ensuring that the weather stays out and that the chimney is in good condition. here's a project that we took on this past year with a professional conservator. You see the striking before and after photos of the headstones. Just a word to the wise, I would please do consult a professional when undertaking any stone cleaning. It's you can do a lot of damage if you are just using a rough bristle brush and some product from Home Depot. So we analyzed the stone itself and then cleaned it appropriately. We'll be doing a handful of other monuments and plaques restorations in the near future too. Hazard tree removal. So unfortunately, we've had to remove 3 historic trees on the site within the past 5 years, each time working with the city and working with the Oregon SHPO and the National Park Service Cultural Landscape folks. And we are anticipating having a finished cultural landscape plan in place, at which point we will begin the replanting process. One of the issues that you always face with historic structures is providing access to the facilities. This year I do have design funding lined up through recreation fee dollars to begin the process to figure out a way to have access to the first floor of the McLaughlin House. So most likely this will be a ramp coming off of the Center Street sidewalk with a 90-degree turn and entering the building. This will not solve any of the issues on the second floor. We're not going to be putting an elevator in this home, nor a lift on the proper front door side. But I think this is a very important project, and it will ensure that we can provide the same level of programmatic and experience for all visitors. And then a few of the anticipated projects that we have formulated in our project management system. Really anything, as Tracy mentioned earlier, from wallpaper and carpet to floor refinishing to seismic upgrades and other monuments restorations, including the fountain and historic plaques that are on the site. And then the last project on there, we will be installing a fire sprinkler system inside the Barkley House.
You might want to also just briefly touch on the accessibility that we'll also be looking at moving forward with regard to the Barkley entrance and restroom, which is on there too, the design and rehab.
Yes,
Which is will be a bigger project.
As part of the project to provide access to the McLaughlin House, we are going to install a ramp, concrete ramp, low-profile ramp around the backside of the Barkley House, with the thing that will, at some point in the future, remodel the interior space and reconfigure the rear porch to provide an accessible entrance and restroom.
Accessible bathroom.
At the Barkley House to serve the site. And that's it.
So I don't know if there's any questions. We wanted to just give you sort of a quick glimpse of the future, and then if you have further questions, I mean, certainly this is just an invite to remind you that we're here and that we are doing what we can to move these projects forward. Again, for us, projects just don't happen by magic. We have to begin to identify the need, then go through the various stages of, which is very similar to the city, all of the design compliance work to move forward. And then hopefully as we jump through those hoops, we can also line up the project dollars to make them happen. We've been very, very fortunate with this site, and we've been able to be successful in completing a lot of projects. And we hope that luck will stay with us as we move through, and we're committed to do everything we can to protect and preserve both the McLaughlin House and the Barkley House.
Any questions for the commission? Oh, there you are. Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mayor Holliday. Mr. Lewis Has there been any discussion with, or excuse me, Mr. Phil Lewis? Has there been any discussion with the National Park Service and the Ermitinger project?
Not since I've been with the city, no.
Okay. Does that ring? Does this ring a bell?
I'm
back to the room.
I know.
I believe
Yeah.
the bell is rung.
You know.
Yes, Mr. President, I've heard this before. Ringing the bell again. Yes, we're I think we have provided in the past regional historical architect support. I know that Alex has met with and supported Oregon City staff. And where we've provided some assistance with the Ermitinger House. It's a very significant site. I do have to remind everybody the past. It was part of the legislation, and at the 11th hour, it was decided by Oregon City to remove that house. Had that not occurred, it would be part of the national park today. And so, recognizing that there was a decision to pull that house, we felt, and I felt very strongly that we wanted, and I know that the city leadership at the time felt that we wanted a legislation moving forward that had 100% grassroots support. And there were questions about the Ermitinger House from a number of members of the community, and so I supported the notion to pull that from the legislation. Such legislation, as you know, is we were incredibly successful. That legislation moved through. Congresswoman Hooley did a tremendous job of expressing and championing that legislation. It is unfortunate that the Ermitinger House was not part of that legislation, and to this point, I'm not aware of the ability of moving that house through legislation. So that would have to be something that would not be initiated by us, and it's economically speaking, the times, it's a difficult time.
Okay.
Not to say that the house does not have tremendous value and is very important, and certainly.
All right.
No one never say never, but I'm not aware of any effort or movement underway currently to move the Ermitinger for consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank you
Okay.
for your presentation.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Seeing you.
Good seeing you.
Next up, 17181, Rockfall Mitigation Tunnel Illumination, Mr. Lewis, Mr. John Lewis.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. So we're fortunate tonight to hear from our partners at the Oregon Department of Transportation. There's three folks here from Oregon Department of Transportation to talk about the Highway 99E Rockfall Mitigation and Tunnel Illumination Project. So Caitlin Jackson is the Community Affairs Coordinator. She's going to be talking specifically about those projects. And then Rich Watanabe, who's the Metro East Area Manager for ODOT, is also going to talk to us. So you guys want to come up? And Caitlin, I'm not sure. Caitlin Hawley is also here. You just support. Is that right? Or you going to come up? Okay. So we'll let Caitlin and Rich take over and show us their presentation, which I haven't even seen. Looking forward to it.
All right. Good evening, Mayor Holliday and Commissioners. Thank you for allowing us to introduce you to our Oregon 99E Rockfall Improvement Project. We are currently designing a project to increase the stability of the hillside and increase the safety of Oregon 99E in Oregon City. Construction is scheduled for summer 2018. Again, we're currently in design and we're pretty early in the process, so as we move forward through the presentation, please keep in mind we might not have all the answers yet, but we will shortly. We wanted to let you know what was coming next summer. The stretch of hillside adjacent to the highway we are examining is from the tunnel through Kenema, and those are The 3 yellow sections are the specific project locations proposed. However, as we move closer to the end of design, 1 or more sections may be removed due to availability of funding. The slopes adjacent to Oregon 99E have a history of rockfalls, and this project will increase the safety of the highway by reducing the potential for rocks to impact the road. Rockfalls are not only dangerous, but when they impact the highway, it takes time to clean up and reopen the lanes. Since 2008, there have been 8 rockfall incidences in this stretch that I'm sure you've seen at least one of. The wire mesh currently on the hillsides was installed to help control those rockfalls, and it was installed as long ago as 1983 in one stretch. Some rockfalls are minor and don't impact traffic. However, others can close lanes for days at a time. Most recently, in November of 2016, in the center section, the northbound right lane was closed for 3 days, and all lanes closed periodically for cleanup for that rockfall. On this next slide, we have some photos of rockfall incidences. On the left is a massive boulder from an incident in 2015, and on the right, rocks cover the highway from a rockfall incident in 2010. For the 2010 rockfall, both of the northbound right lanes were closed for 2 days, and the farthest right lane was closed for an additional 6 days to clean that incident up. Our geologists have determined that it will be necessary to move or remove the existing wire mesh and scale the hillside. Scaling the hillside will remove the loose rock. The slopes were last scaled when the wire mesh was installed, which again was as long ago as 1983 in one section. The contractor will also insert any rock bolts needed to help stabilize the hillside, and then repair or replace the wire mesh. The contractor will also remove any vegetation that's within 10 feet from the top of the cut slope that's in danger of falling into the roadway. Because the contractor will be physically scaling the hillside, they will need daylight work hours. And to protect the traveling public from potentially falling rocks, and also to protect the contractor, a hard barrier will be put in place between the work zone and traffic. This does mean that lane closures will be in place 24/7 during the work period. We're working to minimize the time needed for these repairs to secure the hillside and minimize the traffic impacts, but we don't yet know how long it will take to secure each section.
Can you take a wild guess?
At this time, our numbers are too rough to give you an approximation. It'll be...
You're talking about closing all 4 lanes.
No, there'll be at least 1 lane in each direction.
Okay, all right.
Just lane closures. At times, there may be full closures, but they would be brief and not frequent.
Okay.
So we'll have more information this summer when we have more information about which slopes, and then we'll come back to you with information about traffic impacts at that time. So during the work, travelers should expect some delays or consider an alternate route. We will encourage northbound through traffic to either use I-5 North or to consider taking Oregon 211 and 213 to bypass the work zone and connect with I-205. Pedestrians may encounter minor detours on the Promenade Walkway or in Old Kanema Park if the contractor needs to access the slope from above. If they do, we'll acquire the necessary permits to do so. The work is scheduled to take place in summer 2018, and we're in the process now of identifying key dates and high-traffic events, such as the Clackamas County Fair and the school schedule. We'll then attempt to accommodate these in our construction schedule. We are in the process of setting up meetings with stakeholders in your community and the surrounding communities. This includes informing your neighborhood associations and businesses of this work. We are also coordinating closely with the city with respect to your pipeline project, which is up next on your agenda, and our rockfall project. We'll also be coordinating with emergency services. We have already developed a project website and are in the process of developing an online open house. When construction gets closer, we'll hold an in-person open house to discuss those traffic impacts. We'll be reaching out to your residents through various methods, including the Oregon City Trail News publication and mailings as needed. We'll be at community events, and we'll use social media and publish some traffic advisories. We're also exploring the use of variable message signs placed well in advance of the work zone to alert people that they're encountering traffic and give them a chance to choose an alternate route. As we conduct outreach, we welcome your suggestions on whom to reach out to. We also invite you and your community to visit our project website, sign up for our email newsletter, and stay in touch throughout the project. Our project website is up and running and will be kept up to date, but please be aware that links will be changing this summer as all of ODOT moves to a new website hosting platform. When that changes, I'm happy to provide all of you with the link.
Thank you, Caitlin. We wanted to also inform the Commission of several other projects that are happening in the area that we're currently starting to design. One of the first ones we're just initiating the design is illuminating the tunnels. And also as part of that project, we're planning to install a variable message sign on the northbound direction just as you're coming down. It's about where that sign is now. So that's where we're anticipating to put it right now. This variable message sign will alert travelers to congestion in the tunnel or just beyond the tunnel, so if they're coming down the grade that they know something's happening up ahead of them. And so we just started design on that, the illumination and the VMS variable message sign design. So we'll keep the city apprised of how we're doing on that and when we're planning to do construction. Looks like it probably will be at the end of 18 or 19 that we're going to be doing this work. In addition to that project and the Rockfall project, we have a couple of construction projects that are going on in the area this coming summer. You may have seen some work on I-205 in between the snowstorms. We're installing barriers in the medians out there to prevent serious crossover accidents. And so you'll see at various locations where there's openings, we're either putting a guardrail up or we'll be using cable barrier in the median. And so once it dries out a bit more, we'll start working on that again. In addition to that project, we will be repaving I-205 between the Abernathy Bridge and I-5 this summer. And so we're just in the process of advertisement, and so once we get the contractor on board, we'll let folks know what the contractor schedule looks like. But
you're talking about all lanes from
Yes.
the Abernathy to I-5?
Yes.
Okay.
Most of that work in the past, we've done that, and we've done it at night because of less traffic. It's seems to work better that way. So we're aware of the impacts of the traffic and issues, and we'll get signs out once that gets started and have more information.
Okay.
Are there any questions?
Are there any questions?
No.
Commissioner Mangerberg?
I just want to say thank you. I know that there's fierce competition for ODOT funding to maintain and improve your roadways, and you have choices, and really appreciate your investing in Oregon City and for letting us know early that things are coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I guess.
Just one quick question about I-205. Will there be times when all lanes will be closed at the same time, or one will always be open at least?
We're working
Each
it
way.
so that we can have lanes open. There may be rolling slowdowns or something like that, but we're going to do most of the work at night on the freeway. We're also going to be working at 10th Street as well, paving that, and so upgrading the corner ramps there.
Rich, 10th Street. Can you further define 10th Street?
The exit at West Lynn, 10th Street there. Sorry.
Not ours.
Off of 205.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay, and last but not least, 17-180, Oregon City Bluff Waterline Replacement Project. Again, Mr. John Lewis.
Again, thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. So for this one, I'm going to introduce Dana Webb. She's our project engineer for the City of Oregon City. So Dana, you want to come up and take the show? So I don't know if all of you have met Dana, but Dana's been with us just under a couple of years. She has been carrying what I would consider a pretty heavy load for Oregon City. She's done a lot of good things for us. And so besides this presentation, she's also the lead project delivery person on the Malala Avenue grant, which for those of you, I know all of you know, but for those of you in the audience don't know, that's a significant grant for the city. It's a $3.8 million grant for about an $8 million project. So Dana has been carrying the lion's share of the application work and the follow-up work that's been required to obtain that. So behind the scenes, she's done an amazing job for Oregon City. And so just wanted you to know that. So with that, Dana?
Hang on. So I did want to say that Dana was also one of the critical key people that we had that dealt with us during the landslide event we had a year ago last December. So I just wanted to give her kudos for that as well.
Yeah, that was interesting, taking project engineer and turning him into a volunteer coordinator. She did a wonderful job with that, but it was definitely something that I think she was not quite ready for. Dana.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm here tonight to introduce you to the Highway 99E Bluff Waterline Replacement Project. This project ties into what you just heard from ODOT. It's located in that area. Just south of the tunnel, you may have noticed the water line that's attached to the rock bluff. So it's an approximately 90-foot water line that in December of 2013 experienced a small leak during the winter weather. That leak was repaired, but it was determined that basically the water line had deteriorated and reached the end of its useful life. Additionally, as we continue to go through winter weather, the operations crews have to spend a lot of time making sure that an adequate amount of water flows through the pipe so it doesn't have this issue again. So the project is to replace the pipe. So in order to do that, they will remove the pipe. They will remove the slope mesh located behind the pipe. They will scale the rock bluff adjacent to the pipe, which could include rock bolting of large boulders that may be loose that would be better to reattach than to remove. And then they will reinstall the slope mesh. While we have the pipe down, we will do a video inspection of the water line that runs under Highway 99E to confirm its condition. We will install the new 10-inch water line and reattach it to the bluff. And during this, we will experience traffic control similar to the ODOT projects. So the traffic impacts. So in this photo, you can see the blue line is the location of the water line. Back in August, we did a one-lane closure on 99E to do a site inspection to better understand what's going on, where the pipe goes underground. So during our water line replacement project, we will have a minimum 10-day closure of 2 of the lanes, 24 hours a day. We've worked with ODOT and identified the best time to start that lane closure is on a Friday morning at 11 a.m., so after morning traffic. The contractor will have 3 options of start dates, all Fridays in June. So starting in June allows, the weekend holiday travel for Memorial Day to be complete. It gives them the window to do the work, and then we'll have all 4 lanes back open before the 4th of July holiday weekend. As ODOT mentioned, we may experience impacts to the promenade if the contractor needs to access and work from the top. In that event, we will provide an ADA accessible alternate route.
So you're talking about a closure of 1 lane in each direction?
Yes. So it would be the essentially we'll close the 2 northbound lanes, and one of the southbound lanes will become a northbound lane.
Right.
Because of these lane closures, we're required to do a highway freight notification notice, which is a 28-day notice to the freight community that oversized loads will not be allowed to use this corridor. So we're working closely with ODOT on that. And additionally, we're working with them to utilize their permanent message signs on 205 southbound and 99E southbound to provide advanced warning to commuters about this project.
Just as an aside, are you also communicating with City Canby?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So it's a little tough to see on here, but essentially the lane closures will, so the work site will be right in here, but the lane closures will begin down here for southbound. So just after you pass under the arch bridge, we'll start to transition to 1 lane. When you come to 99E at Main, you will not be able to make a left turn during the construction work. That will keep the traffic moving more efficiently. There'll be the 1 travel lane up along 99E, and then we'll open back up to 2 lanes at South 2nd. Additionally, kind of going the other direction, it's the same thing. We'll transition into the 1 lane around South 2nd, and then through back, open up back at Main Street. So the concern was the travel lanes through the tunnel. So we will have 2 16-foot lanes through the tunnel so that the large trucks can still make it through the tunnel and not have issues. So we've worked through most of that stuff with ODOT and feel pretty good about the traffic control plan. For our outreach messages, the project is necessary to deliver water to the mill zone, the mill pressure zone, and it additionally provides the fire flows to downtown, as well as provides a redundant supply to the area. The lane closures are essential to provide a safe environment for the contractor and the traveling public. As I mentioned, if there's impacts to the promenade, we'll maintain an ADA accessible detour. And then during that 10-day, 24-hour day closure, the contractor will be allowed to work at night if they choose, although the work is generally preferred to be done during daylight for safety reasons. Work from the top of the promenade will not be allowed during the evening hours.
Can I assume that there is a noise limitation as well during those overnight hours? There are a few neighbors along the bluff. I'm just saying.
Yeah, we've got. I guess most of the noise that we're going to encounter on here is going to be probably quieter than the traffic itself. But yeah, we can look at that.
Okay.
We don't have a noise ordinance, but we can.
So some of our public outreach, I'll be doing a presentation similar to this to the CIC, as well as working with the Downtown Oregon City Group. I'm collecting a list of stakeholders and interested parties, which includes adjacent cities such as Canby, West Lynn, Gladstone, so that they all know about our project and understand the traffic impacts. There's a project webpage. We will post information on social media as well as work with ODOT to have them repost things on their social media accounts. We will send out a project postcard, trail news articles. We've been coordinating with ODOT, and we'll have press releases prior to the road closures.
So are we talking about this June?
Yes.
So I might suggest, because I have a lot more sympathy for the folks in Canby now that I have a business there. So I might suggest that you schedule a presentation for the Canby City Council as well.
In terms of public outreach, I don't know if it's possible there is a way to let some of the GPS systems like Waze know about it, it might be helpful.
I have a quick slide on ODOT's projects, but they did a pretty good job covering that. So with that, I'll ask if there's any questions.
Questions?
Comment, just compliments on a very comprehensive presentation. Well done.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Dana. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're on to citizen comments. Citizens are allowed up to 3 minutes to present information relevant to the city but not listed as an item on the agenda. Prior to speaking, citizens shall complete a comment form delivered to City Recorder. The City Commission does not generally engage in dialogue with those making comments but may refer the issue to the City Manager. Complaints shall first be addressed at the department level prior to addressing the City Commission. Are there public comments? Mr. Gifford and Commissioner Smith.
Thank you. Certainly. You're first. Are you going to talk about the high school? No.
Oh, okay. Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, my name is William Gifford. I live in Oregon City. This morning at the weekly Chamber of Commerce meeting, the Good Morning Oregon City, we were treated to a presentation by the Oregon City High School Choir. Their a cappella group with vocal percussion. It was really quite a treat. This young group has won enough contests that they have now qualified as one of 10 choirs, high school choirs in the United States, which is a huge honor for Oregon City, a big honor for Oregon that they will be competing in Tennessee in a couple of months. Unfortunately, the winning of that prize doesn't come with free tickets.
With money, yeah.
Yeah. So they are in the process of trying to raise approximately $16,000, which is a big surprise for a lot of their parents. Be careful what you wish for. And so I just wanted to point out the fact that although we are very, very proud, and there was a little fun, a little past the bucket this morning, but anyone that would be interested in that, I wish I had more specific information. The vice principal, Kathy Johnson, was there this morning, and I'll bet that you could contact the school for more specific information as to how to give donations. But certainly a worthwhile cause to promote these kids in their passion of providing some really quality music.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, William.
Commissioner Smith.
Rocky Smith, Oregon City resident. Mayor and Commission, I want to talk about a topic that you've heard plenty about, but there's only 2 months until summer, and we have a very important historic site and house that is yet to open to the public. I have huge concerns about that. I have had for quite some time. My hope was that the construction of the Ermatinger House would have been completed last spring and the house would have opened last summer. That did not happen. My hope was then that by the time I was off the commission, there would be some sort of agreement with the city and the Friends group to open the Ermatinger House by sometime during this year. That has not happened. We're now approaching summer again. And we, as you know, spent with city money and county money and other money over $600,000 to restore that house. Is it finished? No. The interior still needs some work, and the last I knew of, there was a plan for that. The reason I think this is really crucial to open by June, if not sooner, in some way, is that we are approaching yet another summer, like I said, and the longer that we keep that house closed to the public, the momentum that we had in finishing the house, I think it's already ended, actually. I think most people have forgot it's there again. So how do we start that interest again in, one, getting interested people to get involved in the Friends of the Ermitinger House group, and how do we kick off this really next section of the house in terms of dealing with the interior carpeting, furnishings, as the McLaughlin House is dealing with. In June is the Rose Festival. The Rose Festival has contacted members of the heritage community in Oregon City to be very involved in the Rose Festival. As you know, the Ermitinger House was where the city of Portland was named, and if we had any better opportunity to educate the citizens of this region and Portland about the importance of this city and its history of connection to Portland with streetcars, etc., this is the time. And if we can use that momentum during the Rose Festival season to open that house and educate the population of Portland that their city was named in this house, I think it would help us generate the interest in going to the next step. If we wait another summer, I think it's a big mistake. Right on a minute.
Wow.
So let me say, first of all, Commissioner, I absolutely agree with you. I was hoping that, maybe late summer last year we would have been able to get that done. I'm not sure. I think Mr. Lewis can bring us back an update at the next meeting about where we're at and what the process is going forward. I am sitting down with Mayor Ted Wheeler on Monday, and I had met with Charlie Hales, and we talked about recreating the coin flip between myself and him, and I would offer that same opportunity to Mayor Wheeler. So maybe we could do something like that, at the beginning of Rose Festival or something else like that would create some media buzz that could help us with that process.
In addition, if you could remind Mayor Wheeler that a past Portland mayor made a promise of contributing close to $200,000 to the Ermitinger House, which the city of Portland is yet to do. Not that we expect him to follow through on another mayor's commitment, but
it's my first meeting. I think I'll let that one slide a couple.
All right.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
I had a question for...
Yeah.
I just wonder, because I know on the weekly comments that we get, there was a reference made that there is work going on with the Ermitinger House right now. So, Mr. Phil Lewis, could you give us just a kind of a brief little overview and what's going on there?
Correct. So there were some, over this past year, community services staff have worked with specialists to identify the appropriate wall, either wallpaper or the shiplap that's there. It had been determined that wallpaper was not appropriate for the house, which was the original thought process. We had obtained my understanding was that was the original thought process. Again, I was not here during that time. And so over the time that I have been here, it has been determined that would not be appropriate for the house. And so we've been researching ways to find funding for wall treatments. The bids that we got back were more than double what we were anticipating at the time, and did not have dedicated funds for the wall treatments. We have worked with finance to identify funds within our current allocated budget in order to complete the work, which came in right around $22,000 to do the drywall and painting that is required before we can start to program the space. So we have paperwork that just came in this week and are anticipating within the next month to begin the construction process.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks.
Keep pounding on them, Marky.
Mayor.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Oh,
sorry.
So I'll throw this question out, and I'll throw it out first to Phil Lewis, and perhaps Commissioner Smith wants to comment. In the realm of project management, do we have a milestone or a Gantt chart or something that we need to accomplish, specific things, and a minimal level of completion at which time we can open this to the public? Does that exist?
No, we do not have that currently laid out.
how do we know then that we're at a point where we can open this to the public? We have no goal other than open it up.
I think one of the key issues is the programming and the furnishing. Is that correct, Commissioner Smith? You want to come up? Let's get this out in the open, get it done.
So the furnishing, and when I was still on the commission, it is true that the expense to restore the house in terms of wallpaper and drapery that is period correct would cost way more than what we could deal with. So it wasn't that it wasn't appropriate for the house, it was that we couldn't afford it. So the wall coverings, the $20,000, which at the time I was on the commission was set aside for this project, somewhere, I can't remember where, but that the plan was to cover some of the really raw walls with sheetrock so that we could at least have the house in a way that looks appropriate enough to just open the doors. That's one piece. So that nothing's moved on that since I've been on since I've left the commission. When Scott Archer was here, the Friends of the Ermitinger House made a proposal that was given to him and has been there with the city and sitting with Phil Lewis for that time. I don't know that there's been a dialogue, or to what extent the dialogue has been between the Friends group and that plan. The plan went, as far as I know, needed to go to Parks and Rec advisory, but that still hasn't been solidified, nor has it come to you to even look at a draft of it, as far as I know. So, those things have to be dealt with soon. I just absolutely would be furious and shocked if we extended this another summer. So I really don't know what the answers are or where we're at, but I don't care. There's no excuse to not having that house open by June.
Okay.
So I leave that with you to hopefully have a conversation and see how we can get there. There's more than enough of us that are willing to help us get there if I need to help too, or anyone else does. But
Commissioner Ide, do you have a question, Commissioner Smith?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. Then I would suggest sooner rather than later that we put this on a work session agenda and get all the appropriate folks in the room, including the Hardings and Commissioner Smith and whoever else, and let's hash through and get a plan together.
I would certainly agree with that. I mean, the goal is to get the thing open by June. The question is, what do we need to do and what can we forego and still accomplish that introduction?
Well, I think we need to have all that information
in
at that work session.
I agree.
Anybody else? Okay. Thank you. So we'll move on. No further citizen comments? Then we're going to take 5 minutes before we get into this next item because I have a sneaking feeling it's going to take more than 20 minutes to get through. So we'll be back at 10 after. So we'll come back to order. I did neglect.
Talk to you later.
I did neglect at the beginning of the meeting to remind folks that if you have a cell phone, please turn it off or silence it. I'm going to make a slight adjustment to the agenda at the request of the city manager. We're going to move the 6C up to right now. This is the appeal file AP 16-02, modifying conditions of approval for construction of a new medical office building and parking lots. Ms. Turway.
Thank you very much. Before we have the staff report, I have the disclosures that I have to read associated with the quasi-judicial appeal hearing.
Okay.
A public hearing on a land use application is scheduled for tonight. A staff report has been prepared for this application. It's been made available to the public 7 days before the first hearing. The staff report identifies the applicable approval criteria that apply to each to the proposals. The quasi-judicial hearing procedure that the commission will follow is set out in state law and the Oregon City Municipal Code. The hearing procedure steps are shown in the chart. This is a unique case because this is an appeal of a Type 2 decision. As a result, anyone who submitted comments below, so we sent notice of the application to to folks that invited them to comment for a period of time. Only those people who submitted comments below who wish to speak will be able to and should fill out a speaker's card and give it to the planning staff before the hearing. Speakers will proceed in the order in which their card is received. You should fill out your address on the card so the city will notify you of its final decision. The other thing that's kind of unique about this case is that the only issues that can be raised in this appeal are the issues that were raised in the notice of appeal, which relate to 2 conditions of approval. So testimony and evidence should be directed toward those issues that were raised in the appeal. Written materials submitted during the public hearing must be presented to city staff in order to become part of the record. If a person intends for PowerPoint presentations, oversized poster boards, reports, pictures, or other exhibits to be used in their oral testimony, they need to be placed in the record. Copies must be submitted to the city staff while the record is open. If they are not given to staff, they will not be included in the record. If the commission makes a decision to which you disagree, any issue that you may wish to appeal must have been raised for the consideration of the city commission or LUBA or both. Without raising the issue on the record with sufficient specificity and accompanied by statements or evidence that the city and all parties can respond, the issue will not be deemed appealable to the State Land Use Board of Appeals. In addition, failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issues precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Now we will open the hearing and the record for city file number PC 17-027. As I pointed out, it's a limited record, open record, limited to the issues raised in the appeal. Do any commissioners have any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, bias, or any other statements to declare?
No.
I do not.
Have any commissioners visited the site?
No.
I have not.
I drove by it.
I drive by every day on my way to work.
Yeah. Does anyone in the audience wish to question any commissioner about these disclosures? Now we'll turn it over to Ms. Turway.
Okay, Mr. Roy.
Thank you very much. City staff approved a Type 2 staff level decision for a about 30,000 square foot medical office building near the intersection of 15th and Division. That application was appealed by the applicant. So the reason for the appeal was based on 2 conditions of approval, as our assistant city attorney already identified. The first is regarding timing of pavement restoration, and the second dealt with the options for compliance with our stormwater manual. Since that appeal was received, city staff has worked with the applicant to refine the conditions of approval, and because of that, we've come up with amended language, and with that amended language, we recommend approval of this appeal, AP 1602, which would implement the amended language. So it would override the original. The application itself would still be approved, but it would be approved with this amended language if you choose to approve the appeal.
Okay, so I'll open the public hearing. Are there any comments? Do we want to take from the applicant first? Or
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Go ahead, sir.
Good evening, Mayor Holliday, members of the commission. My name is Mike Robinson. I'm here tonight on behalf of Providence. With me, almost directly behind me, is Mr. Weston York. Weston is the project manager for Providence. There are only 2 things I want to tell you tonight. The first is how much we appreciate the fact that your staff worked very closely with us to come to a resolution of this. And we've known for a long time what a good staff you have, but they really went out of their way to help us find a solution, and we very much appreciate that. Secondly, Mr. Mayor, we agree with the staff report recommending that you approve the appeal by modifying the 2 conditions of approval. That's what we ask you to do tonight, and we appreciate your time. Please ask us any questions that you might have, but I think this is one of those rare cases where this is pretty straightforward, so thank you so much.
Everybody's had a chance to see the applicant's letter that was out today?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions for the applicant?
Nope.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Are there any testimony from the public? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Questions, comments, or motion?
I will make a motion here to, let me get back up here, to approve appeal file or modifications of the conditions for approval, construction of a new office building, planning file DP 1603.
Second.
Does that work?
Just to specify, the appeal file is 1602, the original.
I was going to say, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So moved by Commissioner Shaw, seconded by Commissioner Mengelberg. Any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Mengelberg?
Aye.
Commissioner Ide?
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Mayor Holliday?
Aye. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So moving back to the regular agenda, public hearing PC 17-028, first reading of ordinance 17-1003, annexation of 51.41 acres east of Beaver Creek Road, annexation file AN-16-003. Ms. Turway.
This is Carrie Richter.
Are you going to do that all again?
No, I'm not going to do it all again.
Okay.
Aren't you happy? Before we get into this, I want to tell you how we're going to do this. We have before us an annexation application, which has to do with the application of OCMC 14-04. We're going to take that first. Then we're going to make a decision on that. Then we're going to take ordinance 17-1003, and then we're going to take 17-1004, which is the ordinance instructing staff to send the annexation to Secretary of State to adjust the lines. So since our last hearing, on February 1st, the City Commission instructed us the public and made a decision to leave the record open until February 15th with a schedule for the admission of new evidence and a deadline for comments and responses and final argument. As we presented in the staff report, the city received a fair amount of additional evidence during the open record period. So the first thing that you all need to do is make a decision about the record related to the annexation land use file. But before we get to that, I should have said that does any commissioner have any ex parte contacts, conflict of interest, bias, or any other statement to declare since our February 1st hearing?
No.
No.
I do not.
Does anyone in the public wish to question the commission about these the non-disclosures? No. All right, so moving on. Now let's make a decision about the record. So staff received some evidence during the open record period. The first 2 7-day open record periods were for anyone to submit new evidence. The last 7-day period was for the applicant to submit final written argument. In the staff report, we've listed what that testimony is, who we received testimony from. We did receive some testimony after the deadline. We received some testimony from Ms. Grazer-Lindsay and from Ms. Ruger. And so we need you to make a decision about whether or not you wish to comply with the schedule that you set on February 1st and accept the evidence that was submitted in a timely way, and reject the evidence that was submitted after the deadline, or if you want to do something different. If you want to do something different, we can talk about what that different thing is.
And just to clarify, we received a third item that was received after the close of the testimony as well.
That's right. The Commission's pleasure.
I would pose a question. Were there any extenuating circumstances that prevented specifically as influenced by city staff or any member of this government, that prevented the timely introduction of that material within the time frame specified?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
Commissioner Shaw?
I think that we accept, we don't accept testimony after the closing date.
You would recommend you would endorse staff's recommendation, accept the new testimony submitted within the schedule identified, and reject the testimony that was received after the deadline.
Correct. Reject the testimony afterwards. Yeah.
Got a head nod all around there? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, why don't we have a vote?
Do you need a motion?
Yeah.
Okay, give me a motion.
So moved. Would be fine.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Mengelberg, seconded by Commissioner Ide. Is there further discussion? Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Mengelberg?
Aye.
Commissioner Ide?
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Mayor Holliday?
Aye. Okay, moving on.
Okay. I have a very brief presentation. Sorry.
I was going to say. Blue,
So,
go ahead.
just want to bring your attention to the annexation area. It's 117 acres. No development is proposed with this annexation. The annexation we're proposing be approved in two separate ordinances. Ordinance 17-1003 is for annexation of 51.41 acres, southern portion of the site. Ordinance 17-1004 is for the northern portion, which is 63.82 acres. The southern portion of the property has an acknowledged city comprehensive plan designation, and there's a discussion of why this is in the staff report, and we'll be willing to go into more detail on that. The regulations and approval criteria, which we discussed on February 1st, include compliance with Metro Code 309, local government and boundary changes, Oregon City Municipal Code, Chapter 14.04, annexations, Oregon Revised Statutes, Senate Bill 1573, which we will discuss as well, and the Transportation Planning Rule, which is the Oregon Administrative Rule 660-012. The City Commission's decision is based on a finding of a positive balance of factors, which are discretionary. The annexation does not have to meet all of these factors. The Commission need only find that there is a positive balance represented by the proposal, and those include adequacy of access to the site, compliance with the comprehensive plan, availability and adequacy of public facilities and services, presence and mitigation for any natural hazards and any effects that may be presented to on designated open space, scenic, historic, or natural resource areas by urbanization of the area, and any significant adverse effects on the economic, social, and physical environment of the community of Oregon City. And we presented those in our findings at the last hearing. I'd be happy to go in a little more detail on that, but we have already presented these recommended findings to you. So staff's recommendation is we've prepared proposed findings, which include a summary of findings and conditions for adoption by the City Commission. We're happy to modify those at the direction of the City Commission. The Planning Commission's decision was they voted 3-2 to recommend approval of the annexation to the City Commission. And if you determine that these annexation factors have been positively met on balance, we're recommending adoption of the proposed findings by the City Commission for the annexation 1603 and approval on first reading of ordinances 17-1003 and 1004.
Before, are you finished, Pete?
Yes.
I'd like to add two more things that I think might be of importance to the Commission in their making this decision. First of all, we provided the Commission with a copy of the Corvallis decision, which was a ruling by a Benton County Circuit Court that the Constitution did not protect the home rule authority of the city of Corvallis to not comply with Senate Bill 1573 and send the matter to the voters. So what we can take from this decision is that compliance with 1573, should you decide to go that way and not to send it to the voters, would not be a violation of the city's charter if we use this case as instructive precedent. Second thing I want to make you aware of is that last Wednesday, the Oregon Court of Appeals affirmed LUBA's decision on the Beaver Creek Concept Plan decision. So we, in effect, won that decision. So that affirmance will mean that the Beaver Creek Concept Plan is not acknowledged until the appeal period expires. So that's why we're still recommending this bifurcated approval, because that north half will not be acknowledged under a city comprehensive plan until the appeal period expires, which will be April 12th. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Where are we right now? I guess is my question. In the process, right this second, where are we?
We are deliberation on annexation 16-0013 to make a determination on recommended findings for compliance with OCMC 14-04-060.
Okay, so before we go a whole lot farther down the road here, is this a public hearing?
This is a public hearing, but the record is not open. The record has been closed. So this is for deliberation only. That's
Okay.
why I didn't read the disclosures.
So are we allowing public comment or not?
No.
Okay.
Unless you would like, unless you choose to. The record is closed, so you could take testimony
But
if you want.
if we take testimony, does that then become part of the record?
Yes, we have to reopen the record.
Okay.
Just a reminder, at the February 1st meeting, we left it open for 7 days.
Right. Okay.
7 additional rebut, and then 7 final rebuttal from the applicant. So that was.
Was there anybody who signed up to testify to this matter? Okay, so the commission's pleasure, where we go from here.
Perhaps in plainest language, for the benefit of this audience and those at home, can you summarize the effect of this 1573 on the citizenry of Oregon City's right to vote on an annexation? And if I were to say that there's nothing that the community can do to influence this annexation by a vote under the charter, would that be correct or incorrect?
I think it depends on whether the commission decides to follow 1573 or not.
Let me try to answer that for you, Commissioner.
Give me a little help.
It seems to me that if we are going to follow the law as it currently stands is Senate Bill 1573 is law, signed by the governor, and has been upheld by a court. So at this point in time, I believe that we don't have the ability to send this to the voters in anything other than an advisory capacity, because the legislature has acted, the governor has signed, and the court has ruled.
A court in Benton County that is not controlling here, but instructive.
Right.
Correct. Could the commission do nothing and not make a decision and decide to send this to the voters? That is what they are doing in Corvallis. That could be something that could be done.
So before we go a whole lot farther down, I need so that we're operating inside the rules, I'd like to hear a motion so that we have something that we're actually discussing.
I have a clarifying question.
Commissioner Megaberg.
So what is the next step in the appeal of Senate Bill 1573? Is there any more appeals?
There
it
is
going
an
to Supreme
appeal to the
Court?
Court of Appeals.
And when will that happen?
This is on a circuit court schedule, so I think that the appeal period is 60 days from February 22nd. It's not expedited like land use cases are, so it could be a year till it was resolved.
And to clarify, even if a decision were made at that level,
That level would be controlling. It will
there
be
would not be
controlling.
a subsequent potential for
Well,
appeal
there could
to
be
the
an appeal to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, well, okay.
That's
So
what I'm
I
asking.
thought your question was whether or not it was controlling. A Court of Appeals decision would be controlling. Yes, there is an appeal from the Court of Appeals decision to the Oregon Supreme Court.
Okay.
So let me ask a further question then. In your professional opinion, seeing how the circuit court has ruled, what is the likelihood of that decision being overturned at the appeals court?
I think it is likely to be upheld,
Thank you.
particularly because we have that unless otherwise provided by state law clause at the introduction of our charter provision.
So let me ask a further question then. If let's assume that the appeals court affirms the lower court's decision, then at that point we wouldn't have a choice, correct? The voter approval of annexations in our charter becomes null at that point.
It would become controlling.
So
1573 would become controlling, yes.
right. Thank you. Okay.
Further question.
Commissioner O'Donnell. I have to look at the back to make sure.
You want me to turn it
You're
around
still a
for
new
you?
guy, you know.
You're going to love it. If an individual on this commission proposed that we put this out for a vote of the people, and assuming that passed, which is dubious, what would be the effect of that if the people voted as they previously had to deny this annexation in view of the current legal framework?
Well, I think that if the commission were to vote to send this to take no action and to instruct staff to send this to the voters, I think that it would be possible that someone would bring a declaratory action or a mandamus action against the city, asking a court to force us to comply with 1573.
Okay, I'm prepared to put a motion forward.
How about it?
Feel free.
His first motion is just cool.
Be sad if his first motion failed.
I would propose that we place this annexation on the budget for a vote of the citizens of Oregon City.
On the ballot.
On the ballot, excuse me.
So,
really,
Ms.
we need.
Richter?
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say before we get to that, we really need to evaluate. There are two questions here. There's whether or not this application satisfies the land use criteria. And then there's a second question of whether you want to put it on the ballot or not,
So-
compliant with 1573. And what I was trying, the reason we've set it out this way is my hope was that we would deal with the land use component first, because you could say that the land use criteria aren't satisfied and not put it on the ballot, or not make a decision about putting it on the ballot or following 1573. So, but you guys, sorry.
So if the question is sequence of events, I can withdraw the motion for the moment. We can conduct the other business and reintroduce the motion at the conclusion of that business.
That would be the better.
Okay,
I'll do
so
that.
I would entertain a motion for the first reading of ordinance 17-1003.
So moved.
No.
Oops.
What?
No.
Hold, Ms. Richter.
We need a decision on the land use component, the AN 16-0003, the findings that are going to be attached to the ordinance.
Well, then how about if we put it in the paperwork in the order that you want us to talk about it?
So are you asking for a motion?
I'm
that
asking
would
for a
approve
motion
the-
to approve AN 16-003, which are the findings, to say that the commission finds that the annexation criteria are satisfied.
So moved.
I would make a second motion before we enter that motion.
Hold on. No, got a motion on the floor at this point. Is there a second? Hearing none. Commissioner O'Donnell?
I would like to open it up for discussion so we can formulate the record based on review of these documents and then proceed as Commissioner Ides would like to do.
The procedure generally is to have a motion and a second, and then the discussion ensues.
Well, if the motion is to adopt this in summary, there won't be, will we have a discussion on that?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
then
that's
feel
the point.
free.
The point is
All right,
we're
feel
going to have a
free.
discussion on the AN 16-003, and if the commission chooses to not approve that, then we
We're
can
done.
move on from there. So, Commissioner Ide, did you have a motion again?
Yes. And the motion is to approve annexation file AN 160003 as presented.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Ide, seconded by Commissioner Shaw. Now to the discussion.
If I'm the only one up, I'll speak. In reviewing this document, It's open to interpretation. There's much discretion involved. This document, I want the people at home to understand, and the people here, despite how it reads, it's just a guide for discussion, and it is subject to amendment. There's some troubling things in it that you may find if you read it, as far as the testimony of the general public versus expert testimony. Unless you can put a measurable figure on some of your testimony, like an intersections performance, your testimony is not considered according to this document. It's if it's not factually supported, factually being like a numerical or quantitative value, it apparently holds no value. Any of my comments tonight will be based, the source of these comments will be on this document and this document alone, and or documents referenced by this document. So in deciding, for purposes of discussion, there's certain specific things that are referenced. On page 43, adverse effects are referenced under Oregon City Municipal Code 1404-060.7. Diminished services are referenced under 14.3.2 on page 32. Stormwater is referenced on page 38 only in that it makes recommendations and not mandates. Recommended that you do this. The school capacity question on page 38 I explored because there's a question of adequacy. The school chose not to comment. I'm not sure that a no comment by our school officials is the same as an endorsement of the policy. In fact, there's a passing reference to the need for future financing, which can be interpreted as a bond. And finally, there's the question of transportation. Specifically, those documents that deal with that are the highway mobility policy and the Kittleson study, which is often referenced. So in viewing all those things, the question is, are there adverse effects? And when you look at those things, what are the adverse effects on commerce on a truck route that includes Route 213 and Beaver Creek? What are the adverse effects on the quality of life as defined by general knowledge? What is the question of diminished services? And that includes, is the quality of your road service diminished? Now, I don't want anybody sitting here or at home to think I'm an obstructionist, because I believe in growth, and I believe in managed growth, and I believe in not living with a difficult situation for the next 20 years while situations that we've created are resolved. The question of school capacity, I already spoke to it briefly. The transportation thing is particularly troublesome in that the mobility policy focuses on state highways only, 213. There's not a concern about the cross streets. Those are ours or the county's. Highways, the state highway focuses on highways. The traffic control emphasis is to maintain acceptable state highway performance. The Kittleson study on traffic says that 213 in Beaver Creek has grown in volume at 2% a year over the last 5 years. So it's currently at a 0.9. It's a high collision intersection in the top 5% of the state. The solutions to solve that from our own studies range from $5 million to in excess of $25 million. Funding is somewhat, I guess I could say, nebulous or undetermined. I think all those things need to be considered. The reason I bring them up, again, is not to be an obstructionist, because I do truly believe in growth. But annexation factors under 1404.060, item 3 states adequacy and availability of public facilities and services to service potential development. Item number 7 under that same section, 1404.060, states that there needs to be a lack of any significant adverse effects on the economic, social, and physical environment of the community by the overall impact of the annexation. Again, Beaver Creek is designated as a truck route. So does that influence our ability to conduct commerce? And finally, I'll defer to our own City Commission vision, missions, and goals. And goal 3 is to enhance the livability of the community. And I'll leave it to others to decide if moving this forward enhances the livability of the community. And that concludes what I have to say.
Well, let me ask you a question while we're on that thing. So, what exactly do you see as the impact of the annexation? Because I think that's the key question here. Are we moving the annexation forward? Are we talking about the actual development that could happen in 3 or 4 or 5 years? Because I think that's the key question that kind of got confused at the Planning Commission. There was a lot of discussion about, specific ideas about whether water and sewer and other things were available today versus do we bring it in and then plan for those things, and all of those questions have to be answered during the land use process.
And I understand that distinction, and I've got no qualms about our ability to furnish water and sewage services and probably deal correctly with the wastewater treatments and runoff treatments, groundwaters.
Even transportation.
No, I don't agree with the transportation piece.
No, but the question is, does the annexation affect transportation?
Well, I suppose the question then becomes, why do people annex into the city? What is the benefit of annexing this acreage into the city? Because they want another level of government to control them? Because they may increase their taxes? They're here because they want the infrastructure,
the services
that supports the next step. So I understand the distinction, but item 3 again says to service potential development when I review annexation factors. It's an arguable point. I'll stand on what I say. I know my support was probably going to be non-existent, but I wanted to make the statement.
Thanks, sir.
Yep.
Anybody else? I don't have I've got the wrong thing up on my screen. Commissioner Shaw.
Okay, well, I'm also a believer in growth, but also controlled growth. And again, this is just the annexation issue for us tonight. This annexation has been vetted through our staff, through consultants, the best consultants we can get, and everybody gets, and also our planning commission. It's been vetted severely through those guys, and I respect our planning commission dearly. So it's part of the city's comprehensive plan. It's part of the Beaver Creek concept plan. It's part of the regional framework plan. It's met all the criteria that we ask for an annexation. So I'm in favor of this tonight.
Further discussion?
You were reading my notes.
What? Commissioner Ide?
Just simply the same comments that Commissioner Shaw mentioned. The criteria has been met. The Planning Commission has approved it, and they're the ones that go through it piece by piece. And it's our obligation as a city commission that when something comes before us, if it's in the public interest as well as if it complies with our codes and all the other rules it has to comply with, I feel obligated to move it forward. So those are my comments.
Comments, Commissioner Megenberg?
I was initially hung up on the confusion around the land use application versus annexation and concerns about the transportation capacity. And then I stepped back and understood that difference. And so all of that will be vetted when the land use application comes forward and the concurrency requirements will be met. This area has been studied extensively. The reason that you have an urban growth boundary is the intention is that someday it will be developed. And so it doesn't appear that we have a choice about making a decision tonight. I would naturally prefer to have the voters weigh in since it is such a large acreage involved. But the applicant has demonstrated compliance to the annexation components of this, so I don't want to stand in their way.
Okay, well, I'll finish up on this, and that is that the Oregon State Legislature passed Senate Bill 100, and I don't even, you guys are the planners, when? 30 years ago? 40 years ago?
73,
1972.
Okay. And the intent behind Senate Bill 100 was to have a comprehensive and deliberate land use planning policy so that not only the cities but the entire region could make long-term decisions about growth and about where things were going to happen. More than 20 years ago now, when I was sitting here as a city commissioner, we brought this land into the urban growth boundary. Yet, and it has been considered as part of the, quote, 20-year land supply for the region and for Oregon City for that entire time, yet for all intents and purposes, it was not part of that land supply because we couldn't annex it into the city because of voter approval of annexation. I believe the reason that the legislature this last year made this change was because we're not the only ones that are having this issue. And during this legislative session, we're actually having discussion about sub-regional planning, being able to make trades between, say, Wilsonville and the Damascus area or vice versa, other places, so that when land is available and able to be annexed and developed, and there's other areas, say we take Damascus, for instance, that is no longer a city and probably isn't going to be able to be developed for many, many years. Some of that land that's in the urban growth boundary can be taken out and then given to these other places that want and need and are prepared to develop. So I think that what we need to do right now is to do this annexation and then let our land use process go forward and deal with those other issues as they come up. And we have to resolve those issues. We have to resolve traffic and sewer and water and streets and, you know, all of those kinds of services when that happens. So when we say we got a no comment from the school district, it's really too early, at least if I was sitting on the school board, and I have, to make a decision because we don't really know what's going to happen there. This is really just about bringing this land into the city so that we can plan it. So I'm in support of this particular motion. I want to thank Commissioner O'Donnell. I'm exceedingly happy that we have folks that are willing to, you know, dig deep and learn. I know that it took me a year when I first got on the city commission to really understand the processes and the rules and all of the stuff that we have to learn to get there. And I think Frank's done just an amazing job of digging in and reading the material and understanding the things. So I don't want anybody to think that any of us up here don't consider what we all have to say and are thoughtful about making those decisions. So I'm done speaking. Is there any further discussion? Then call the roll on the motion, please. Did you have something else, Commissioner?
Yeah, I think I'd just simply like to say that the level of detail in this report that I referred to, if it doesn't apply, maybe it should be excluded. And I don't know if there's a proper time for me to make my motion to put it to the voters.
That would be after this is over.
Okay, then please proceed.
Call roll, please.
Commissioner Mengelberg?
Oh, hang on.
Was there a motion for the?
You made the motion.
No, but that was for the land use or the.
That's for
we didn't have the vote on that.
No,
No,
you guys
we're
made
do-
another motion.
We're
and-
doing the
Okay.
the annexation file is what the motion is right now.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So, Commissioner Mengelberg?
Aye.
Commissioner Ide?
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw?
Right.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
No.
Mayor Holliday?
Aye. So now, where are we, Ms. Richter?
We are at a motion, a second, and a discussion about ordinance number 17-1003, which is the south half of the Beaver Creek or the golf course annexation proposal, which relates to the question of annexing the property, instructing staff to notify the Secretary of State to annex the property, or to not follow in compliance with 1573, or not follow 1573 and do something else.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Is this the time?
This is the time for your motion. You want to make one?
Even if it dies for lack of a second, I'm going to propose that we place this before the citizens of Oregon City in the next election, to vote on this annexation.
Is there a second? Motion dies for lack of second. I would entertain a motion for 17-1003.
Move to approve PC 17-028.
First reading.
First reading. Number 17-1003, annexation of 51.5 or 41 acres east of Beaver Creek Road. Annexation file AN 16.
We already did that part.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Shaw, seconded by Commissioner Ide. Ms. Richter.
Ordinance number 17-1003, an ordinance of the City of Oregon City approving annexation proposal number AN 16-0003 and approving the annexation of certain property located on South Beaver Creek Road, including Beaver Creek Road right-of-way to the City of Oregon City.
Further discussion? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Mengelberg?
Aye.
Commissioner Ide?
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
No.
Mayor Holliday?
Aye. Okay, so now we're on to.
We're on to the north
Yes,
piece.
yeah.
PC 17-029. So you would take a motion and we would do the same thing for the north piece with a delayed implementation date and awaiting the acknowledgement of the Beaver Creek Concept Plan.
Motion to approve the first reading of ordinance number 17-1004, annexation of 63.82 acres east of Beaver Creek Road.
So I'll wait for the second.
Second.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Ide, second by Commissioner Shaw. I'm confused here, so maybe you can unconfuse me. The first thing we did, the AN, whatever it was, did that also include the annexation file for this?
Yes,
Okay, so the first piece did both pieces.
they did.
You guys are killing me.
It was the city's form didn't allow us to enter these separately was the problem. We had to enter them with the ordinance as I understood it.
Okay.
So I apologize for the confusion.
All right. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, call a roll.
Just a second.
Oh, sorry, Ms. Richter.
Ordinance number 17-1004, an ordinance of the City of Oregon City approving annexation proposal number AN 16-003 and approving the annexation of certain property located on South Beaver Creek Road to the City of Oregon City with a delayed effectiveness date.
Call a roll.
Commissioner Mengelberg?
Aye.
Commissioner Ide?
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Nope.
Mayor Holliday?
Aye. Okay. So, moving on to general business. 17-171, Oregon City Emergency Operations Plan 5-year update. Chief Band. So let's take a couple minutes and let the room clear of.
It's okay. It's okay. I knew it was going to happen, but I felt like I had to make the statement.
Mayor and Commission. This should go fairly quick. Emergency operations plan. If Ambien were a book. So, I'm just going to do a very brief overview of emergency operations. What is this plan? Our plan expired. It was a 5-year plan that had been put together through some public process that a vendor had basically put through us, and that was done at the end of this last year. What is that plan? Essentially provides a framework for response in this city. More than anything, what it does is identifies roles. Who's going to do what? What do all of you do? What is your role in an emergency? Myself, I'm the emergency operations coordinator or manager, and then everybody else in staff, what is their role? It's not for everyday activities. It's just for emergencies. It complements the Clackamas County Emergency Operation Plan, the State of Oregon's Emergency Management Plan, and the National Response Framework, and it also identifies critical tasks needed to support a bunch of different activities. So what that means is, in the back, if you look at the back of the plan, there's incident annexes. There's one that we're adding. I think there's now 12. There were 11. Flood, drought, fire. It's basically, if you have no idea where to start in an emergency, you can go back to these annexes and look, and it kind of gets you going and gives you a bunch of basic ideas about what to do.
Nuclear attack?
What's that?
Nuclear attack?
I don't know if it's books that thick. There's 4
red zone in there.
Yeah, there's 4 functional annexes too that basically cover city functions. There's emergency services, human services, infrastructure, and then recovery strategy. And it does the same thing there. Kind of outlines kind of how do we stay operative. So emergency management. There's 4 basic phases of what we do. That this book tells us as staff to do in a city, even when there's not an emergency. Mitigation and prevention, trying to make sure that the likelihood that anything bad is going to happen, if we can mitigate or prevent them from happening, good. 2, being prepared, and then response is obviously responding to an emergency. The priority is obviously life-saving, stabilizing the incident, and then the 3rd would be conserving any kind of property. And then recovery, short and long term. So dealing with, if you think about the landslide, dealing with up front what happens, getting people housing right away, stabilizing the whole thing. And then there's the long term. How does the city rebound from that? What do we do with the site in the future? The things that are still going on today. One thing that you will probably see more than anything else is who declares an emergency and how is an emergency declared. It is the first step in getting to state and federal disaster assistance, money, and other resources. The Commission has the legal authority under ordinance number, you can see it there, to declare a local emergency. If there is no quorum available, then the city manager or myself, or really an incident commander, can declare an emergency. The kinds of things that can get us around are if we have some major, call it some sort of a flooding, and we need to get some vendor to come in right away. We would normally maybe go through some kind of contract process to do an RFQ or an RFP, and declaring an emergency if we just need help right now to mitigate something to prevent further damage. This gives us some protection. Those sorts of things are reasons why we would call a emergency. The other thing, I think there's something in there that if something was declared by Tony or myself or somebody else, then we would come in front of you and do a formal, have you ask you to do a formal emergency. What does the declaration include? Description of the situation, what the conditions are, a boundary that is affected by whatever the emergency is, and outlining what special powers are being activated or what why we need the emergency to operate in a certain capacity. And if we're asking for state or federal help, we need to tell them that our resources have been expended and what assistance is required. Changes. So what what is it that changed about this manual and how we did it? We got a bid from the vendor who did it the first time of $16,000 to update our manual, which is a lot of money. And we started having this conversation internally about what has changed in this city that would require somebody changing our manual for $16,000. Jen is here, my executive assistant, who did a ton of work basically updating this with the help of Nancy Bush with the county, Martin John, and several other people. And basically we did it ourselves. And it was Nancy Bush who does a ton of work with the counties. The county had 19 changes. Changes like this number 12 that we added that have to do with the dam failure, and they paid the same amount that they were asking us to pay. So they had a bunch of changes. We hardly had any. What those changes are, we added one of those annexes I talked about that could affect us has to do with Clackamas River dams. There's several of them. The closest one is obviously a river mill, and then there's several above them. And if there was a major dam failure of some kind, how would that affect our city? And so it kind of gives some guidelines as to where we would start and how we would respond to something like that. We did, as you know, if you were involved in the landslide, the topic of volunteer and donation volunteers. It says in the manual that we're to have a plan. It doesn't really say what that plan is. And our plan is to kind of be a little more deliberate, coordinating with Clackamas Fire. One, they run some CERT programs with some other cities, and what we're basically going to do is kind of develop a volunteer program coordinating with them. And Chris Wadsworth, who you know is our community outreach, she's kind of the perfect person for that because she knows everybody. And so you might hear more about that in the community. There was a hazard analysis, a matrix that gave a numerical value that was completely arbitrary and unintelligible. The county removed them from their manual, and we just took that out. You'll still see there a table that shows in order the different risks that we have in our community to flooding and those sorts of things. There's some incidental changes, names and roles. One of the things that we did do was Martin Montalvo is essentially kind of taking the role of training in the city, of running these training events, because he's really good at that, and he loves it. There are two, we as a city are required to do two training events. They can be anything from a tabletop exercise to having all staff read something. And these are citywide exercises. We stay in compliance with all the different NIMS and ICS training that a lot of people see in their work. And Katie.
NIMS?
Oh, National Incident Management System.
Okay. You know better than to use acronyms.
Yeah, I know. You love those. I think that's pretty much it. There's a bunch of hard copies we were supposed to deliver to people, but I've got thumb drives for everybody. And I think that pretty much covers everything, unless you have some questions about the manual.
I have a couple of statements that I want to make. One, we got to see this emergency operations plan in action, up close and personal in a real event, as I mentioned a year ago last December. One of the things that impressed me most was, and being a former military guy, we had a standard operating procedure for everything. And that's exactly what this thing is. It gives everybody, when nobody knows what's going on, you go to the book, and now we do. We know what's going on. Tony's the incident commander. Jim's in charge. We've got all this stuff going on. We know what the roles of the elected officials are. Contrary to popular belief, in a real technical sense, the elected officials are not in charge in an emergency. We're here to make policy decisions and to provide the framework so that the staff can do the work that they need in a timely manner.
So we're there to listen and to, give opinions and make comment during these daily sessions that we have during an emergency. But the real decisions are made by the incident commander and the folks below them. And I think this is it's a great resource. It's probably one of the best operations manuals that I've seen in any city or any organization that I've ever been affiliated with. So I think everybody's done a great job, and certainly that last incident proved that having the plan allows you to function in a time when you might not be able to if you had not spent the time prior to that making the plan and practicing and understanding what was going on.
I'd like to comment on it.
Go ahead.
In response to a prior citizen inquiry, I had occasion to call Chief Band and ask him about this very subject. And in the course of that discussion, it came up that he was approached by outside vendors to the tune of $16,000 to do this. And he took it upon himself, and he did it internally without the assistance of that. So perhaps $16,000 isn't a lot in the grand scheme of things, but it's a lot to a lot of people in this world, and I want to compliment you for taking that on and doing it and affecting that savings.
A lot of help. But thank you. Is there anybody else want to comment?
Yeah.
Commissioner Hyde?
I agree with you. However, sometimes we forget that there's a staff cost too. So I'm sure that it took them a lot of time and energy, and going over to the county and asking all those questions and so forth. But probably not to the tune of $16,000. So I just wanted to point that out. But anyway, that was what I was going to say. I was just going to ask if there are trainings that are done on a regular basis. I know Martin used to do that quite frequently or occasionally, and I just wanted to make sure that was going to continue.
Yeah, that'll continue. We've done everything from large-scale things where we're taking people out of work for 4 hours to more simple things. And we're also looking at doing a variety of things. There's the obvious things. It's really good. A lot of times the state or the county will do, or sometimes there's a national event where everybody's doing something. So it helps us get to know our manual, but we also, as you saw in the slide, it makes us practice with the county or with the state, even making phone calls and making sure that all of our agreements are in place. But we're also looking at what are the things we've never trained. We've got a train that runs through town, and outside of the town I grew up in Montana, one time they had a train derail and it had a bunch of some nasty chemical, and some people got, in really hurt because some kind of a container opened up. So, we try and come up with things that have not happened and, train for that just to try and be prepared for everything that we could. So, yeah, we'll continue to do that. One of the other things that we started doing in the last couple of years that I don't think has ever been done before, I'm not aware, but Martin, myself, John, Jen, and Katie Durfee, we meet quarterly, keep minutes, and we're just kind of always talking about emergency management and the things that are going on. And I think we're probably more present in some of these meetings with, the county. County is a great resource for us. Their office, Nancy Bush, she's just a superstar, and she has a lot of knowledge and was real helpful to us. So.
Now, this is the county's Nancy Bush, right?
Correct.
Not the city's Nancy Bush. Yes. Just to be clear.
I had a question, just thinking back about major changes that might affect emergency management. They came out with some newer LiDAR maps that identified more landslide areas in the city. And then CCOM just passed a levy where they're going to have a much more sophisticated communication service. Are those the kinds of things that you considered in updating your manual?
The LiDAR, I am not sure what that's the first I've heard of that.
That's ground penetrating radar.
We use it from Public Works and planning perspective. We've adopted those maps. So, and from an emergency operations plan perspective, there's obviously there's landslides. There's an annex on landslides in this operations plan, but it's not related necessarily to the historic landsliding activity. But there's an awareness of it for future development, all that all those kinds of things.
Maybe the way of answering your question is there are, and that's something that we added. So in the different places, there's some historic kind of record in some of these annexes about these are things that have been identified as issues. There's also a natural hazard mitigation plan that accompanies this that we're updating. There would be a major change in, like the dam. That's a major change because that's something that's never really been talked about in here before. The landslides and the fact that we have kind of a propensity, that is already in here. So it isn't, we're aware of it, but we've always been aware of it, but it's not to the point where it's elevating any to a degree that we weren't aware before about landslides. Is that?
Well, I guess I was thinking, and John would know better than I, but if the LiDAR maps are showing that certain key transportation corridors or roads are now at more danger of landslides, and that's one of your major incident disaster response roads, then you might change your policy around that, or just be aware that you might be losing that section and reroute.
Yeah, I think that's a very important piece, something that we would consider. It's not necessarily the level of detail that shows up in this manual.
I think it is the kind of thing that, so the natural hazard mitigation plan, there was a slide that talks about the different components of what emergency management does. There is a natural hazard mitigation plan that is unique to our area that addresses how do we mitigate problems so they don't. And it is more detailed than this. These are 30,000 foot big brush, not as finite.
Thank you. Further questions?
Excuse me, my name was on here. Anyway, I do want to partner with Commissioner O'Donnell here and thank you for taking this task on yourself and your staff here. $16,000. It seems like everything around here now costs $1 million, but at $16,000, if everybody kind of did their part, and which I'm sure everybody does, it all kind of adds up, and so I appreciate that. And then the LiDAR part of this, I wasn't that familiar with it till I happened to drive up and look at the landslide here, and Channel 2 was there, and they informed me about the LiDAR maps. I'm sitting there, okay, And I think the following week when this came up and Mr. Lewis brought up and showed his maps up here, there were some LiDAR things on there. So that was kind of interesting. I got educated from Channel 2, so that's it. But thank you for doing that.
Thank you for the comments.
Okay.
So I'm asking if you will approve this emergency operations plan.
No, you're not.
What?
I'm sorry?
This is an update.
Yeah, this is
there was no request for action here.
It's a move to approve the updated plan.
Move to approve the updated emergency management plan.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion? Call the roll.
Commissioner Mengelberg?
Aye.
Commissioner Ide?
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Mayor Holliday?
Kinda slid that right.
Refreshing change.
Oh, yeah, it was supposed to be under that. Oh, okay. Jeez,
Okay.
I think we should open it up for questions again, though. I didn't realize it was that cheap a thing.
17175, Lynn Avenue Sewer Moratorium Project closeout. Can we do this briefly, Mr. Lewis?
We can do this really briefly. I put it on the general business agenda because it is significant. I mean, you're talking about $16,000 on emergency operations plan. This is an ask of the City Commission. We don't take it lightly. It was a change of condition for the Lynn Avenue project. We think that the value and the costs associated with this change are aligned with the work that was needed out there, but it was a change, and I'm very sensitive to that. I feel like we brought to you in November a request for $150,000. We need another $78,533 to completely wrap up the work's done, with the exception of the pavement. And so this would cover everything but the final paving on that project. So tough project. large ask, but at the same time, solid value. And we've vetted all these numbers, and we feel confident that we've
So
got
the only
right
reason
what
this
we're
is
looking
coming
for.
before the commission is because it exceeds the $50,000 limit that's authorized to the city manager to approve. Is that right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
approved, you'd approved an extra 150.
Right.
So we needed additional funds on top of that.
Okay.
Is there a project that's falling off the list because the costs on this project are higher than anticipated?
No, we've been doing pretty well with the other moratorium projects. This is the fourth, if you remember. So we have found project savings in those. It's starting to equal out, and we do have some challenges with the budget authorization, and we may have to come back to you for some an additional budget request yet this year, because we got to cover the paving, and we're hoping to move forward. If you remember the last project, we've got to get that one going. Probably not going to construct it, or we won't be constructing it this budget year, but this did go over our budget request. But if you look at all the projects in total, when we were originally adopting the moratorium, this falls within that allocation. But we've been busy, let's put it that way, with sanitary sewer work.
So the short version is there is no budgetary impact at this point. Yes?
No, there would be this we can cover, but we're going to be using some of the rest of the remainder of the funds that we had planned for this year. So I need to work with the finance department to actually do a budget amendment to cover what we plan to finish out for the rest of this year.
Okay. Questions? Motion?
Motion to approve Lynn Avenue Sewer Moratorium Project closeout.
Second.
Moved and second. Further discussion? Call a roll, please.
Commissioner Mengelberg?
Aye.
Commissioner Ide?
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Mayor Holliday?
Aye.
Thank you.
And we're on to the consent agenda. Commissioner O'Donnell wants to pull 8D, 17-169. Mr. Phil Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, why don't you, let's hear what Commissioner O'Donnell has to say, and then you can.
Okay.
So the ask is for approximately $90,000, which exceeds Mr. Conkle's ability to sign off on. The report lacks, it doesn't tell me if it's a budgeted item. It doesn't tell me the service history of the device, whether it's failing imminently. It doesn't give me options on repair or replace. It has no discussion on salvage value now versus later. I guess my thought is, just because we can do this, the question is, should we do this? I'd like to see the justification rather than give me $90,000. I think we're stewards of the city purse. I view Mr. Conkle as the chief operating officer. I view you as a head of this department. And I view this commission as the board of directors for the city responsible for this expenditure. So if you're prepared to add those explanations to it, I would be comfortable moving forward. If not, I'd like to see it at a future date.
I can speak to some of those items, and I know that I've had conversations with Public Works. John Lewis's department does manage the fleet services for the city. The form that I've used is a similar form that has been used for fleet resolutions in previous commission sessions, so that is the form that I did use for this session. I can speak to the mower is about 10 years old, used almost daily during the operating season. The maintenance on the mower has tripled during the time that we have owned it. I have pictures of the mower if you'd like to see them. We are going through the state procurement in order to obtain the mower, and so using best practice for securing the mower and to best benefit the city and the community as a whole.
So my interest in asking those questions is simply to make a good decision. And if you're telling me the service history is a failing device, the time is to replace it is now. Probably the optimum salvage value is now versus later. It's not a question we're doing it just because we can. It's the right time to do it. All I ask for, and I give this as guidance to any member of the city, when you put these reports forward, give me some justification. Tell me why we're doing it now, why we have to, why we can't defer it, and what the value is. And I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it now, and as a result of this discussion.
Okay, you pulled it. You make the motion.
I'll remove that. I'll withdraw my motion and pull it.
No, too late. You already pulled it, so now you got to make a motion to authorize it.
Okay, I'll authorize putting that back on the consent agenda.
No, you got to make the. It's already off the consent agenda. You can't put something
Okay,
back on.
all right.
You got to make the motion for the fleet purchase authorization for the parks department.
Sometimes you have to help a
Second.
freshman volunteer unpaid.
Okay,
I
moved
move
and
to
seconded.
And I just
Moved by Commissioner O'Donnell, seconded by
Twice.
Commissioner Hyde.
I just wanted to add. I think there were two other things there. One was that it goes to auction to
Recover
recover some of the funds, and it was in the approved budget, our approved biennium budget for fleet replacement and anticipated. And you were correct. This is above my $50,000 signing authority, which is why we'll see these moving forward. So, but thank you for the clarifications.
Yeah, my point was those questions are valid questions from any private sector management group, and maybe I'm trying to impose those criteria on the government, but I think they're valid, and I'm more comfortable, and I feel that I can stand before the citizens and say this was the right time to do it.
Great.
And let me just state that there is no such thing as a stupid question from any of you. Okay? So, we have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Call a roll, please.
Commissioner Mingelberg?
Aye.
Commissioner Ide?
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Mayor Holliday?
Aye. So, does anybody else have anything further to pull from the consent agenda? Then I would hear a motion.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Seconded.
Moved by Commissioner Megenberg, seconded by Commissioner O'Donnell. Further discussion? Call a roll, please.
Commissioner Mingelberg?
Aye.
It's fine.
Commissioner
I
Ide?
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Mayor Holliday?
Aye. So, on to communication. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, Evening Commissioners. Just a couple of quick updates. Oregon City's annual cleanup day is April 29th, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. at Wesley Lynn Park. So there'll be information on the website available for that. Hopefully folks will come out and help volunteer, do a little city cleanup on April 29th. Some of you may hear, just wanted to give you an update. When we annex properties into the city limits, there are other service district boundaries that have to change as well. For example, Tri-City boundary, adding them into the Tri-City boundary district. Tri-City is currently going under a boundary cleanup for West Lynn and Oregon City. So there'll be a hearing for annexation to Tri-City County Service District on Thursday, March 30th at 10 a.m. at the Red Soil site up there on Kane Road. So just if you see something associated with that, this is a boundary cleanup for the district. We've had Police Chief Band has had some calls as it relates to some of the discussions we've had about what are our law enforcement, how do we address immigration status, how do we, what do we do when we make a contact or we have an arrest, and how do we handle those situations as it relates to working with the federal government on immigration policies. And so we're getting some more calls and just trying to clarify with folks and concerns on both sides of the issue. So we're going to hold an open house at Clackamas in cooperation with Clackamas Community College, just to provide some information about how we operate as a city and as a police department. Be able to take questions from folks that have concerns, but really I think it's just a way to have a community conversation on a topic that's on a lot of folks' mind right at the moment. We're starting to hear that a little bit from the community. So as much as we can do to provide clarification, information, we'd like to do that. Last thing we want is just misinformation out there about how we operate as a police department or as a city. So once we have that date, we'll pass it along to you as information, and then we'll go from there. And then my last thing, just a reminder once again, I'm going to be out on vacation starting March 23rd. Wyatt Parn will be acting city manager while I'm gone. That is all I have for tonight.
Commissioner Mengelberg.
I attended the Alternative Mobility Study meeting the day after our last commission meeting, and they agreed to recommend a volume to capacity ratio standard and to consider a longer period when that could be in effect. So now it's looking at the peak 1 hour, and they're opening to consider a longer period, either 2 or 4 hours over the long term. So that recommendation will be a refined recommendation after our final meeting. Will come to the commission at some point. And Mr. Lewis is the expert on it, so ask him the details.
Good.
That's it.
Right.
Just very briefly, I had a preliminary meeting with Gail Yazolino at the end of the Oregon Trail, and because I'm going to be seated on the board now as the commission liaison to Clackamas Heritage Partners, and she gave me a full tour and all kinds of things. But in summary, we discussed how important and excited we both are for the city to begin working on its tourism plan. And a couple of the things that she was very excited about was being able to work together and to collaborate with all the different groups in the city that are involved in tourism, and begin having more of a centralized administration of all that. Anyway, that was just the preliminary meeting. And then one other thing, on the Downtown Oregon City Association is announcing its Best of Oregon City citywide promotion, celebrating the best of what Oregon City has to offer. And so there's going to be a little competition. Voting opens April 1st for the public, and you can those businesses that want to participate will submit a registration in advance. And then the public will vote on like the best Mexican restaurant or whatever. And you can go to, where did I put it? bestoforegoncity.org and begin voting on April 1st. So anyway, it's just kind of a promotion, and then they'll put together the winners and finalists in a big color 50-page booklet and send it out for promotion of the businesses in the Best of Oregon City. So that's all.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Well, if it didn't show, other than reading in depth about annexations, I actually did attend a meeting with our state representative, Mark Meek, and he's going to be here again on the 21st in Oregon City. The exchanges are very meaningful. He's a very fluent individual. He also is a freshman at his job, as I am, at a different pay rate, but he is. And I'd welcome anyone to attend that. I think you'd find it invaluable. For those that really want additional entertainment, they can go to the mayor's State of the Union message tomorrow.
Yeah, if you're not doing anything Thursday.
Commissioner Shaw.
Had my usual meeting with the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association and my usual meeting with the CIC. Occasionally I go to the CCBA, which is the Clackamas County Business Association, which alliance that meets 7:30 on a Wednesday morning in Lake Oswego. And but it's interesting. It's there's quite a few folks there from the business community in county, which is sheds a little light on other county activities that we don't hear about. So, and then also attended the Chamber Awards with Commissioner Ide and Commissioner Mengelberg. That's it.
Okay, so I unfortunately had the flu last weekend, so was not able to attend the Chamber thing. That's the first year in a long time that I've missed that. I typically like to sit with the city manager, no matter who they are, and just kind of raise hell, but didn't get the opportunity this time. I attended the Metro Mayors Consortium, of which I am a member, is a group of 22 of the mayors from inside the metro region. We meet typically once a month, talk about issues of common interest, legislation, those kinds of things. we formalized this relationship this last year. We're now all paying a certain amount of dues. We have a staff person that does those sorts of organizational things. But what we did this year is we went down and met with the legislature, the senior leadership from both the Democrat and Republican side, the House and the Senate. Also met with Nick Blosser, the governor's chief of staff, and basically we presented 8 things that all of us mayors agreed were issues for all of us. And it was extremely impactful to those folks to see these. There were not 22 of us there were only about 14 of us there, but it raised some eyebrows when we say that we represent 1.6 million people in the metro region, and that has a tendency to get folks' attention. Unlike an individual House or Senate member, when all of us get together, we do have the power to make changes. And so a couple of things we talked about, obviously we've talked about recreational immunity before. We feel like that's going to happen, that we're going to get a resolution to that in the city's favors coming up. There were several other issues, but I think the big point is that just like we found working between the 5 cities in Clackamas County, that if we get together as cities, we can make a difference and we can make things change. So, I attended the first meeting of the Willamette Falls Legacy Project Group today, along with Mr. Conkle and Ms. Turway, and I think there were a couple. Mr. Lewis was there. Just a regular quarterly meeting, nothing terribly exciting going on. We're continuing to go down the process. I guess the one thing I would announce is that if we haven't already, is it June 3rd? So June 3rd will be the actual kickoff of the preferred design alternative for the Riverwalk. That's going to be in OMSI. It's open to the public. We encourage everyone to come down and see what's going on with that as we move the project forward. I had a couple of meetings with developers over the last couple of weeks, just talking about general ideas about Oregon City and that sort of thing. And I guess that's about it for me. Anything else from you, Mr. Manager? Anything else for the good of the order? And we're adjourned.